As a change agent in economic and social justice for over 45 years, I knew stories of resilience, well-being, and prosperity were taking root on reservations and in cities all across this land.
Western colonizer society is very much individualism and individual wealth accumulation and individual asset accumulation and what's best for me. That word power is not even a part of our Lakota language. It's something that's so foreign because it's not rooted in anything that's in our value system. It was always about the greater good. It was always about what's best for the whole nation, what's best for the earth, and not what's best for the individual.
We talk about that. We talk about our unhoused relatives don't need more policing, right? We don't need for the city and for the police to criminalize poverty. We need connection. We need relationality. We need those relationships. We need to be a community and take care of each other.
African American mutual aid started pretty much on the boats when we were dragged here forcibly in chains. We were helping each other, even though on the boats we were, the captors wouldn't even let people who spoke the same language or who were from the same community be chained together. So from then we had this sense, I think probably from the way that African cultures had also had a sense of mutuality and communalism, and then we practiced it wherever we could.
It's not that Indian people can't do business, it's they don't value profit over community. They don't value profit over life.
How can we build, not having one big company where you have hundreds and hundreds of employees, but looking at models in these neighborhoods where we could, create several companies with, 50 employees at a time where we could build wealth in the community.
People often wonder in this country, how are we going to put fundamental beliefs about we're all one, our connected humanity, and wealth is more than money into actual practice, so it makes a real difference for us in our lives and in our futures? Well, Native and Black Americans are doing it, and here's how.
On our 34 acres, we have a regenerative community development. It's one of our 8 initiatives. Our broader goal for this community is to be net zero. Our language is embedded with our lifeways and our spirituality. We have a kindergarten through 1st grade total immersion classroom. We are designing a truly Lakota total immersion school.
It's an immersion program. They'll hear the educators, including myself, always in the language, always speaking Lakota with them. That's the wealth, in knowing what people were saying, where you come from, and that there is ceremonies, and that there is songs.
It is an indigenous school, but we are very inclusive. Anybody can come to the school and apply to come to the school that would like to attend. So yeah, it's going to be focused on, indigenous education. There's an accreditation for Oceti Shakoi Essential Understandings. We're going to have both of those accreditations. The Oceti Shakoi Essential Understandings, that's the 7 Council Fire Understandings. The Oceti Shakoi are the people that walked on this land first.
So, the Wolakota Regenerative Buffalo Range is a 28,000 acre buffalo range that will be home to 1,500 animals that will be able to produce between 300 and 400 surplus buffalo per year. At 28,000 acres and 1,500 buffalo, it will be the largest Native American owned and managed buffalo herd in the world.
I thought a credit union is different enough than a bank. Because it is member owned, and not to make some bank board members, owners wealthy. Right. Until Lakota Federal Credit Union was chartered, there was not a single bank, federally insured financial institution depository on the Pine Ridge Reservation.
We are providing seed funding for children's savings accounts. By providing a $100 opening account deposit, this is not going to pay for college, but if families are able to put a little bit of money in, some are putting in $5, $10 a month, some maybe at birthday or at a special holiday. We're trying to start the youth when they're younger with opening the accounts, and then help their families to think that it can be an option to go to school, and the kids too. So it's kind of about changing the expectations and trying to build in more hope there. To our knowledge, are the largest seed-funded Native Children's Savings Account program for youth, Native youth in the country.
The Greater University Circle Initiative was incorporated as a place-based strategy working with the anchors. And at that time, we were looking at employee-assisted housing. We were looking at how to create jobs. So again, the Evergreen Co-ops, it wasn't on the table at that time, but quickly became the one thing everybody could get behind.
The model is such that no less than 80% of the ownership or the equity of any of those businesses is held by the employee owners.
Wow.
So there can never be a dilution event of any sort, no private equity or outside investment that, that might take that ownership level down. Once an employee becomes an employee owner, which is a 1-year eligibility period, and then he or she is voted upon by the existing worker owners, so that's step one. Okay. They immediately begin to build equity in the company. They're immediately fully vested for profit sharing.
We have community land trusts. We have our Freedom Farms Co-op. We have our Green Team Cooperative. And then the other one primarily is the Community Production Center. But the main thing, just so folks know that it is actually working on is learning how to produce housing, right? Like different types of 3D print housing.
The land trust model is a way for people to not only own housing that's affordable, but then to kind of pass that on to the next buyer who needs affordable housing. Mm-hmm. So essentially just kind of recycling that affordability from one family to the next. And so because access to housing is becoming more and more challenging, people are willing to consider the idea of the community land trust model, and the idea of not owning the land, and the idea of sharing equity with the next buyer.
In November of 2019, we actually had our vote on Resolution 126R19, which was to establish reparations for the Black community in Evanston using the cannabis sales tax revenue. There were a lot of different recommendations, and we narrowed that down to what today is a $25,000 direct benefit for housing equity that will build wealth immediately through equity.
And the deposit base for a public bank are the taxes, the fees, the fines, the funds, the revenue that our city accrues, which then leverages to create loans just like any other bank. But the difference between a public bank and a private bank is with a public bank, the interest and profit belongs to the community. So rather than it gets siphoned out of state by private Wall Street bankers and private shareholders, that money stays here.
The other thing that really bothered me was that there were some law students who were clerking at large law firms in the summer who were also on the tour with us, who asked the officers to make people incarcerated fight for their entertainment multiple times. And I just was floored by the inhumanity in that request. I thought to myself, there are people in this jail who can't afford not to be. There are people in this jail who will be acquitted of whatever they've been charged with. But more importantly, there are human beings here. Sorry. And I just was struck by the callousness of that request, but also the power that was associated with it. Because, like it or not, lawyers do have a certain level of standing in this society, right? They have a certain level of access to power. And I thought, wow, these are future lawyers. And if this is what they think about people who are incarcerated in jails, we're in trouble. The Southern Center, our mission is to work for equality, dignity, and justice for people impacted by the criminal legal system in the Deep South, where we are. We work to end mass incarceration, the criminalization of poverty, racial injustice, and the death penalty.
Are you saying you won all 4 cases?
Right.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
That must make you feel awfully good. You can smile now, you know.
I mean, the first case that I had in the Supreme Court was a young man named Tony Amadeo. Many years after the trial, and actually after the case had been upheld, we discovered that the prosecutor had written a memo to the jury commissioners telling them to underrepresent black people in the jury pools. At that time, the law was that if an underrepresentation was greater than 10%, you assumed that there was discrimination, but as long as it was 10% or less, you assume, well, there's just, you know, the percentages aren't going to always work out exactly every time. So he told the jury commissioners to underrepresent blacks exactly 10%, thinking that this would, you know, avoid any challenge later on. Remarkably, the Georgia courts upheld that. The federal Court of Appeals in Atlanta upheld that. This man was going to be executed. And we sort of threw a Hail Mary pass at the Supreme Court and sought to get the case reviewed, and to our thank goodness, they granted it. I argued the case there in 1988, and the Supreme Court saw it very differently. We got a unanimous opinion written by Thurgood Marshall.
Public defenders are handling 300, 400, 500 felony cases, 600 misdemeanor cases. And our whole profession, and I want to be clear on this, trial judges, this happens in front of them every single day and they see it, okay? So state Supreme Court judges, the bar associations, the bar disciplinary committees, the state Supreme Courts, the United States Supreme Court, everybody knows this. I'll state it in its simplest terms. Lawyers may not represent more clients than they can competently represent.
I can tell you in one of our offices we had what was called a wait list. So if you applied for services in our office, there weren't enough attorneys to take all the cases. So if you were not confined, your case would be put on a list and you would be told, we will get to you when we have an attorney available. I was checking the numbers on that office's wait list recently and saw that it was gone. And I called the attorney who runs the office and I said, where's your wait list? I can't find it. It's not in the database. And she said, well, we don't have it anymore. I'm like, what do you mean you don't have it? How did you do that? She said, you gave me 2 more attorneys. That's how I did it.
This is about systemic change. This isn't about putting a Band-Aid here.
The transformation that we're trying to effectuate in our community really is this transformation of healing to hope to liberation. Because once you start on your healing journey, you're able to heal from historical traumas, from existing traumas, ongoing traumas. You're able to find hope again. Hope that life can be better, that life can be different. You can start to dream again.
Please join our award-winning team in bringing these compelling stories of powerful change to public audiences, to universities, and communities. To learn more and make a donation, visit this website.